Books and Fictions, the Cozy Book Club podcast, where we talk about the books we're reading, the thoughts we have on them, and any stories that come up along the way. My name's Morgan.
My name's Desiree, and this week we are discussing The Wedding People by Alison Espach.
If you're watching this episode, we're under the presumption you've already read the book. If you're watching it without reading the book, there are some mentions of like suicide, suicidal ideations, infertility. If any of that feels sensitive, like might not be the book, it might not be the episode for you, but we look forward to chatting to you next episode. Yeah, so we've read this, it's been a few months now. So I read this in December after you recommended it to me.
Yeah, this one was one that I read on the side, and I loved it so much. I gave it 5 stars, and I told Morgan she had to pick it up.
Yeah, she made me nervous with it. She recommended it to me. I was going on vacation, and I wanted something like lighthearted and just very easy breezy. It doesn't start out that way, but it quickly becomes that. But the first 10 pages, I'm like, oh my gosh, Desiree sabotaged my entire vacation.
This book starts out with the main character, Phoebe, being left by her husband, and he left her for Phoebe's coworker. And then Phoebe's cat dies, and that's her last straw. So she decides that she's going to kill herself, but she's going to make it kind of an event. She books a room at a resort that she's always wanted to go to. She does not plan on leaving there. She plans on killing herself there. When she arrives, she quickly finds out that she's the only person there that's not there for a wedding.
Yeah, she was able to book the room by mistake because the bride had planned that the only people in this entire resort were going to be there for her wedding week.
And Phoebe runs into the bride towards the beginning and lets the bride know that she's there to kill herself.
Yeah, she was really blunt with it. The bride's name's Lila, and she's like, well, what are you even doing here? Phoebe's like, I'm going to kill myself.
And Lila did not like that. She immediately freaks out and is afraid that her wedding week is going to be ruined by Phoebe's.
Yeah, she's more worried about her wedding than she is about, this distraught woman in front of her who says she's going to end her life. But it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
It's written in a way. Alison Espach, I feel like, balances darkness and humor so well that even the dark parts of the book you're like chuckling at, which I don't think I've read anything, at least recently, that has that balance so well executed.
I completely agree. That's what really took me with this book, I think, is her ability to do that so effortlessly.
I need to read more by her. I haven't. It's the only one I've read. But, we tend to gravitate towards darker reads. And it's nice to still have something a little dark, but we're also getting the smiles and the laughs and the giggles. I genuinely laughed at a few parts, and I'm not somebody who sits there laughing while I read, even if it is really funny. But there were some chuckles during this one.
Definitely. So Phoebe is kind of integrated into the wedding party by Lila.
Yeah, Lila's got a very headstrong personality and very just demands that Phoebe become part of this now, which is very endearing too. They've also got the age difference. Phoebe's in her 40s, Lila's in her late 20s. And Phoebe's a professor, so she's used to working with people in their 20s. And I think there's kind of an endearing relationship that develops between them, which at first you don't think it's going to turn out that way. But it does, which is kind of fun to watch unfold. And I love reading about female friendships, and it was a fun twist on it with the age gap there too, because they are in such different parts of their life. Lila's about to enter a marriage, Phoebe's exiting her marriage. In the book, she's an English professor, and he's talking about how things in literature go full circle, and you see that happen a few times throughout the book. And I feel like that was one example. They're just two women, opposite sides of life, but they come together in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, I really enjoyed their entire journey together.
Yeah. The night of the opening reception, Lila comes up to Phoebe's room. That's the night Phoebe's gonna kill herself. And then Lila's like, could you just not wait? And then Phoebe's like, I gotta do it because I can't afford another night at this hotel. So then Lila's like, I'll pay for you to stay the week and just wait till the week's over. And so they don't really agree on that, but Lila decides in her head that that's how it's gonna go. So she extends the stay, and then Phoebe does not commit to it that night. And even the way she was gonna kill herself, not that it's funny, but it is kind of funny. She takes her dead cat's pain pills, the tuna-flavored pain pills, and that was going to be it. She's going to take these tuna-flavored pain pills and end her life that way. That's funny.
It's so fun.
I hate to say that it is, but...
No. Alison's little ways that she entered humor into the story.
Yeah.
I loved it. Phoebe goes out to a hot tub and is throwing herself at this guy that's in the hot tub.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't know who the guy was, but it turns out she finds out later that it's the groom.
Yeah, and he was a little evasive about that information
Yeah.
too. Like she's like talking to him and she like just like says, I want you to come up to my room with me. Like and then he's like, oh, like I'm with someone.
Not
And
that I'm getting married this
yeah.
weekend.
But it does it the next day she finds out that, oh, that was the groom I tried to sleep with.
Yeah, because she went on an event with the other wedding guests with Lila, and she walks in and and
Yeah.
realizes that.
Yeah, Lila comes up to her room and demands, like, you need to come on this boat with us because people are hungover and we need more bodies. Something, because I was listening to it yesterday that I didn't pick up on the first time. When they're in the hot tub, they're talking about their experiences and stuff. And Phoebe's telling him about how her mom died and he was raised by her dad. And she doesn't know this at the time, but that's the experience Jim's having with his daughter because his first wife died and like he's raising her as a single dad. So I was just kind of thinking when I was doing my re-listen, like what he must have been thinking at that time. So I feel like that was probably kind of jarring for him. Like, okay, so this woman who was raised by a single dad or without a mom, this year, like everything unfolded to where she wanted to end her life. It's probably kind of scary to hear that, knowing the journey he was
Definitely.
on with his daughter goes by Juice. Melanie, I think was her real name.
Yep, Melanie.
Okay.
Mhm.
She goes by Juice though.
Throughout the book, you see Lila not really keen about being that mother figure,
Yeah.
which I felt eh, saddened by the
Yeah.
the entire book. And it's kind of one of those things that it was building up, and as one of the, are they going to end up together? Because this doesn't seem like they're really aligned.
She didn't seem like she was going to be the stepmom who was going to step up. There's a lot of red flags there. And throughout the book, even once we know Lila's name, she's referred to a lot as the bride. And I think we start to see that that's what she wants to be. She's prepared to be a bride. She's not prepared to be a wife or a stepmother. I also like how Allison did that through the book. She just kept calling her the bride, the bride, the bride.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was very intentional.
And Lila, this is like the event of her life.
Yeah, she's spent $1 million on it. We find out pretty early on because her dad died and said, I wish I was going to be able to see you get married. Here's $1 million for your wedding.
$1 million for a wedding is a lot of money.
It's nuts. I can't even imagine. Like, and where we are, I don't know if we could have thrown $1 million wedding here, even if we tried.
You would just have to be so over the top with every single thing.
I guess if I was trying to make it a week long,
Yeah.
like Lila did, but still, I would love to be invited to $1 million wedding. That
Yeah.
sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, especially on someone else's dime.
Yeah, and they were early in the book when she's waiting to check in at the hotel. She says something about her friends, or she's like about the bride's friends. She's like, these girls are still like young enough to feel like the wedding is about them. I feel like I'm still kind of in that stage. I love being invited to a wedding, like picking out my dress, like doing my hair, figuring out what I'm going to wear. Like, of course, it's about the bride and stuff, but I do feel like weddings are like a fun little main character moment.
And I think that it's great when people feel like that about someone's wedding, because like you bring that like excitement to
Yes.
the event, where I just find it so boring when people are not excited to go to a wedding.
Yeah.
I don't know, like what's not exciting about it?
I am like my best self at weddings. I don't even care like whose wedding it is. It's just sometimes family weddings are a little hard, but like non-family weddings are great.
Yeah. Are you a dancer at weddings?
Non-family weddings, I am.
I feel like if it's a wedding where I don't know a ton of people, I'm like,
Yeah, we went out to Maine this past fall, and it was my husband's friend. I'd only met him at my own wedding, and like I didn't know a single person there except like the groom who I met once, and then Cal, who was one of my husband's groomsmen. We had time of my life. It was so much fun. Like, and it was a Jewish wedding too, so like they're doing like the lifting them on the chairs and all of that. I'd never been to a Jewish wedding, and like there was like a little boy, not little, but he was like 13 or 14. He was guiding me through everything.
oh, I love that.
All like the holding hands dances, just telling me what to do. It was fantastic. It was so incredibly fun.
Maybe we should become wedding crashers.
If they're gonna say maybe we should go Jewish, I don't know why that's not where I thought you were going.
No, I feel like wedding crashing is actually what we need to do, because we don't need to know anyone and just go there and have a grand old time.
Yeah, that would be so much fun. Have you ever seen the like people they hire bridesmaids? Like if their husbands have like 10 best friends and they only have their 3 or 4. I feel like I could do that.
We should look into that.
I know that'd be
I think it
so
would be
fun.
great hired
I
bridesmaid.
know. And like you make up like a backstory and stuff, like how you met them, and I feel like that'd be so much fun.
How much do people charge for that?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like gonna take some commitment.
Yeah. And, like, there are people, like, the big ones, like, they get flown out to weddings, like, put up. Mm.
Oh, we are for hire.
We are for hire. We will dance. We will, like, compliment your grandma. We will do all the things that bridesmaids are supposed to do.
Morgan can sew. So if you have like a little rip or something.
Yeah, for any alteration emergencies, I can stitch you right back up.
That's funny. We should look into that.
That would be fun.
It's best to hire us as a duo because then we can back up the stories like
Yeah.
of each other and you.
Oh, I feel like it'd be so fun. We went to summer camp together every year. That would be really sweet.
I think destination weddings would be something we're particularly interested in.
We are very talented at being bridesmaids for destination weddings, actually.
But yeah, I think it's the best people are the ones that are excited about weddings. I will say, like, if it's a wedding where it's a family wedding and kind of like boring or whatever, I can be the person that's sitting at my table being boring.
Yeah.
But
I feel like family weddings are a time to catch up with cousins. Friend weddings are a time to, like, go to the dance floor and just, like, have a lot of fun. I don't know if you picked up on this, but the book was written, like, right after 2020. And sometimes I don't like reading books set then because you can just tell the authors are so traumatized. In the first, like, 4 or 5 chapters, it was like every single page said something about COVID or the lockdowns or isolation. And, like,
I didn't pick up on that.
it was so frequent at the beginning. You can just tell, like, when the author, like, went through it during COVID.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that poor thing. I'm so introverted. Like, it was tragic and horrifying and bad, but I also thrived a little bit. Like, the lockdowns really didn't affect me too much.
I worked through all of COVID. I didn't. I work in healthcare, and I wasn't laid off or anything like that. So honestly, my life did not change that much, even with lockdown. We didn't really go anywhere anyway.
Yeah, that's how I felt. And, I worked from home before that, and then going to Von Mar. Did you know I was considered an essential worker for Von Mar? So I still kept going to Von Mar.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. That's wild to me.
That is wild.
Yeah, in Iowa, e-commerce modeling was, like, essential because clothing is essential.
So, kind of as we get into the book, we realize that Lila is kind of taken with Phoebe. And what did you take from that?
I was really endeared by it. Like, she was like a moth to the flame. She's like kept going to Phoebe when she should be doing like these wedding activities. It's endearing, but also a little bit sad because you kind of find out that Lila doesn't feel like anyone's really there for her, and she's like seems from the outside looking in like she's got everything she could ever want, but it doesn't seem like she had like the genuine connection with people that she's hoping she does or she wishes that she did. So she's trying to like almost create that with Phoebe, I think, and I think also she likes that Phoebe is somebody on the outside of the wedding. Having Phoebe on her side, and Phoebe's very blunt and no nonsense, makes Lila really attached to her.
Yeah, and I think it's really what Lila needed.
Yeah.
Because Lila is very superficial with everything and everyone that she is close to. So to have Phoebe kind of there making those comments and kind of questioning what Lila truly feels and not what she says was very interesting, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I did too. I think Phoebe offered an alternate perspective or a different lens to what life could be. And I think it was also refreshing to see, like, Phoebe's going through this divorce and still existing and, like, being older. It probably was, like, inspirational is not the word I'm looking for, but just an alternate future for herself. Like, there's life after marriage, there's life without marriage. And I think Lila couldn't imagine that until she met Phoebe. Like, marriage was that pinnacle of her life. She even says, like, that she's been planning this wedding since she was a little kid. And so it's like, what am I if I'm not a bride? But then there's Phoebe, who was a bride that didn't work out for her. And she's still chugging along, even though at the beginning, not super well.
Yeah. And I feel like we mentioned how it's been good for Lila, Phoebe's present. But on the contrary, it's also, I think we see throughout the book that Phoebe's also realizing things about herself as she's from her encounters with Lila. When you kind of see Phoebe begin to realize that maybe this isn't the end for her.
Yeah.
And I love that part of the book.
Mm-hmm.
I loved, I guess, both of them coming to realizations of themselves.
Yeah, they needed each other and, like, to see parts of themselves in each other and that, like, things could be okay. I think they were very healing to one another. That's something like this year I wanna read more books about female friendships. I just I really enjoyed that aspect of this, and I feel like not a ton of books I've read recently have, like, really focused on, like, that dynamic.
Yeah, and this lens for female friendships, I feel like is so different from a lot of others.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, we'll have to seek out maybe if anyone knows of any books that kind of have a similar um view or whatnot of that. I Allison just did it in such a different way that
Yeah.
it really zoomed in on their friendship.
Yeah, it's a really cool dynamic to read about, especially, like, very much a blossoming friendship, like, they didn't know each other existed at the beginning of the book, and within days, like, they're so intertwined and, like, so heavily benefiting from one another. There's a lot of growth within and this book takes place over the course of a week.
The one of the reasons why Lila felt so inclined to be involved with Phoebe is because Lila saw herself as better than Phoebe,
Yeah.
and which you know never really is the case, but because she felt that way, I feel like she was open with Phoebe in ways that she never would be with people that she wants to impress.
Yeah.
And I think that was really interesting to see play out because I do feel like there's a lot of people who, if they're trying to impress someone, they are not themselves.
Do you wanna know what the dynamic kind of reminded me of a little bit?
What?
A Glinda Elphaba
Oh,
thing with Lila being Glinda.
I like that comparison.
Yeah, just, like, little glimpses of it. It wasn't like a parallel, but
So there are quite a few different relationships being touched on in this book. Um, one one piece of that was Lila and Gary have this friend Jim. And what did you think about the um, the beginning of or the beginning of Gary and Lila's relationship and how Jim
oh
played
my
into that?
gosh. Yeah, so that was kind of heartbreaking to read about. So Jim is Gary's brother-in-law when he's the sister or the brother of Gary's late wife. And he initially is the one who spots Lila, has a crush on Lila, doesn't necessarily tell Gary that, but he wants to go to this art gallery that he knows that Lila works at to see her, and that's where Lila and Gary meet for the first time. So kind of like his plan implodes in the worst way possible because Lila and Gary hit it off and ended up getting engaged when he's the one who liked Lila in the first place. So that was sad. And like Lila, we find out she was interested in him too.
Yeah,
Yeah, at that point.
because they saw each other. Did he work by there? Or
Yeah,
his
he
main?
worked nearby.
Yeah, so they saw each other quite a few times leading up to that, and so they had kind of this interest in this person that they were seeing regularly. Like, oh, who is that?
Yeah, they come to the art gallery, and then days later, the next day, very quickly afterwards, Lila goes with her dad to one of his appointments and sees that Gary's actually his doctor, and then thinks like, "Oh, this is meant to be," and just kind of like abandons all thoughts of Jim, which like makes sense. Like that's like such a distraught point in her life where you're always looking for signs. I feel like when things are going wrong. So seeing him again, it's like, oh, this is a sign. This is probably who's like meant to be for me. And then at that point in his life, Gary's lost his wife. He's just, I feel like a sad little clam, like just going with the
Mhm.
flow. I don't even know. It doesn't seem like when you're reading it that he even chose to enter this relationship with Lila. Lila's like a force to be reckoned with. And she just like,
Picks.
yeah, I was like, all right, you're my boyfriend now. And next, thing he knows, he's proposing. Yeah, just like the way we're reading about it, it doesn't seem like it was something he had much. I don't think he was coerced, but I think he was just very much like going through the motions.
Going through their motions is the perfect way to put it, and it's also very interesting because as we read the book, you really learn that Gary and Lila are really nothing alike.
Yeah.
Lila's very high strung and materialistic, I would say, and kind of superficial, which she's not a bad person, but these are kind of overarching themes of her personality. And then Gary's number one concern is giving Juice a good life and setting her up for success and having people around her who care about her. And that's definitely not Lila's number one priority.
She's not ready to enter mommy mode, which, like, at 28, it makes sense that you're not ready to have a preteen daughter. But if you are marrying somebody with a preteen daughter, you got to step up and be, like, hopefully excited to step up. And she definitely was not. I think in her life, so much has come easy to her, and she thought that relationship would too. And she wasn't prepared to be, like, the adult in that situation and, like, put in the effort to build that relationship. She just wanted that to be something that was going to fall in her life or into her lap. But with, I feel like, tweens, it's not always that easy.
Yeah. And I feel like Gary never made a point to really address how important that was to him.
Yeah.
And so because he's just kind of a going with the motions type of guy, it never became an issue, but I feel like it really did a little bit throughout the book. For example, that time where they were going to the beach and they were all going to go together as a family, and Lila didn't end up going, which I can't remember why. Lila didn't end up going, and it was you could tell it was kind of an important moment for them as a family. Lila ditches the plans, and Phoebe ends up going, and that was interesting because throughout the book we also kind of see that Phoebe and Gary they get along very well.
Yeah. And Phoebe also gets along really well with Juice. There's at one point in the book where Juice is like a virtual dog dies. Like, I don't know if it's like a Nintendo type. That's a ripoff for me too. But this virtual dog dies, and none of the adults on the boat are taking it seriously, but then Phoebe does. And like that just, like, I think forges a relationship for Phoebe and Juice, which is really nice. Because I think Juice was kind of thrust into being like in this adult world this entire week, but nobody was like really seeking to understand her, but Phoebe did. And that's something I guess we didn't even touch on early in the book. That's like a big pain point in her relationship with her ex-husband Matt is they go through a few rounds of IVF and it doesn't work. And so like Phoebe's got this urge to be maternal, but hasn't been given the opportunity. And I think some of that like natural maternal instinct comes through when she's interacting with Juice. And I almost think that creates seeing that creates this like strong contrast for Gary, where he's like, okay, this woman who just met Juice is like better at creating this connection than the woman who's gonna be my wife in a few days. Which I think that had to have been a little jarring.
I think it definitely was. I think that was kind of a turning point for Gary.
Yeah.
Gary's mindset.
I was getting anxious reading like towards the end when all this is happening. I didn't want them to cheat together, and I thought that's the direction it was going, and that was going to be really upsetting to me. Thankfully that didn't happen, but I did think there's going to be something happening between them before the wedding, and they're both likable characters. Gary, I feel like, is a little dopey, like he's less likable than Phoebe, but still very likable. Like Phoebe, she knows what it feels like to be cheated on, and I thought that's what she was going to do to Lila, and I was like, oh my gosh, especially with all of like the full circle moments, it's like that's going to be another one, but like we don't want that to happen.
Yep.
And I think if it was going to happen, it would have happened the night that Matt showed up.
Agreed.
Yeah, so I hated that Matt's her ex-husband, and he's like trying to call her, get a hold of her. Somehow, I forget how he finds out that she's at the hotel, and he shows up there. And Gary was with Phoebe at that moment when he showed up, and I hated that he came, but I do think he prevented anything nefarious from happening between Phoebe and Gary. Not that it was going to happen, but if it was going to, it would have been that night.
The whole thing of Matt showing up and saying like he made a mistake and whatever, it was so cringy, and I'm glad that Phoebe did not fall for it. Well,
for a night she did.
For a night she did.
Mad.
That made me very upset. I did not like that choice to have them.
I know. And I feel like we're very similar. Like if either of us were in Phoebe's shoes, we wouldn't have let him in.
No.
Like I think we're both good at like slamming that type of door shut if we need to. Which I get some people, their personalities aren't, and they always are going to hold on to what could have been. But that's not how I am at all.
Yeah.
If I was left, especially for one of my good friends, that person's
You're
dead
dead.
to me.
You are dead.
Like, they could literally die, and I wouldn't shed a tear. Like, it's over.
100%. Yeah, that's just a line that was crossed in the worst way.
Yeah, so she let him back in, and
I do feel like the fact that they ended up being together that night, maybe that was what she needed to be able to
yeah.
cut him off. So I am grateful that if that's what she needed to be able to do that, then okay. But didn't like it.
Yeah, I'm glad she was able to get her closure, but could not relate. My closure would have happened the day he walked out.
Yeah. Towards the end of the book, we see Lila start to really second guess things. So how did you feel about that as it was happening?
Good, but sad. Like, of course,
Mhm.
it's always gonna be sad when an engagement falls apart, especially so close to the wedding. But the author does such a good job, like, setting it up as, like, a relationship that could work, but neither of them are gonna thrive in it. So it's like if they would have gotten married, I think they would have had a fine, happy life. But you could also tell there was, like, happier, more exciting paths for both of them. So it's not as sad as it could have been, but I do think it is sad seeing someone, like, let go of what they thought their life was gonna be, but especially with Lila being so young, it's like
Mhm.
it was nice seeing that she's, like, second guessing if this is the right path for her when I don't think she ever in a second in her life had ever considered another path, and all of a sudden her eyes are being opened to, like, different options.
Yeah, and I feel like we talked about earlier that Gary was the go with the flow. I think Lila made a decision at, the point of they started dating and set her sights on Gary and planned their life to a
Yeah.
T. And for her to even be able to get to a point where she was really thinking about if that was what she wanted to do with her life, I think was a huge turning point
Yeah.
for her personal growth. And the fact that she was able to get there was huge, and it was with the help of Phoebe, kind of being that rebuttal to her, you know,
Yeah.
throughout the week. And I really like this ending and how they don't end up getting married, because I think it's super important for women to see that you can decide to be with someone and you don't have to follow through with it, and
Mhm.
things will be okay.
Yeah, there is, like, a happily ever after for you, even if it's not exactly what you thought it was gonna be.
And there doesn't have to be a huge betrayal between people to decide that your life together is not what you envision.
Yeah.
It does not have to be this huge thing. It can simply be, we together are not going to be, it's not going to be possible for me to be in the life I want to be with this person. And that's that.
I don't know if this is fair for me to say. Maybe it's not. I'll be vague, but, like, my f somebody I know called off their wedding. Like, that made them, like, 100 times more interesting to me. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, you go, like,
Yeah,
that's crazy, that's so cool." I just think it's nice to, like, when women, like, can make that realization for themselves and be like, "You know what, I'm gonna do what's best for me," even though I can't imagine how scary of a decision that is. Like,
100%.
how many people you feel like you're letting down.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, this situation specifically, she had tons of people on site at her
Yeah.
wedding waiting for her to get married. And she also had the pressure of some of the guests being a bit irritated that they had to be there for a week for
Yeah.
a wedding. She had that as well. But it's so powerful to see someone take a stand for themselves, and you have to not care about what other people think and realize that it doesn't matter, because it would be your life, your everyday life, that is affected, not theirs.
It takes a lot of strength and bravery to do that, especially in Lila's position where, like you said, everyone is already on site, ready for this wedding to happen.
I love that this book kind of shined a light on really making us taking a stand for yourself and what you need.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it would have been, like, for anyone who's in Lila's position, just, like, doing what you're supposed to be doing in life without, like, questioning it, it's probably a powerful read. Like, I definitely would recommend this to, like, women in their young early 20s.
100% agree. That I feel like that's the ideal reader for this book, if someone in their young 20s, kind of
Yeah.
ahead of entering into any um, serious relationships, and to be able to kind of to understand that you're not cemented in any certain scenario that you get yourself into. You can always make a change and, to figure that.
Yeah, I think a lot about, because when I look back, I was 26 when I got married, and I'm like, now that feels so young to be married. I'm like, I am so lucky I made the right choice with who I married, because I feel like 26 seems so young, and like I'm only 29 now, but I feel like I know so much more than I did at 26. Like, I just feel very grateful, because I feel like it would have been so easy for me to make the wrong decision.
100%.
And that's like scary to me. And like, I see people get married even younger, like at 22 or 23, and like, I don't know what I mean. It's like just like where my life would be if I married who I thought I was going to marry when I was
Yeah.
22. It's like, that's not a happy outlook for me. But
Yeah.
like, I wouldn't have, like, if I was in Lila's position, even if I knew it wasn't the right decision at that young, I wouldn't have called that off. I would just succumbed to it.
No.
That's crazy.
There's something very real about, like, our brains fully developing at the age of, what is it, like 28 or something like that?
I think they said like it's like a range, like 25 to 28.
Yeah. You start really realizing, like, the opportunities that you had to fuck up your life early and scary. And, hopefully you didn't. But, and the thing is also, like, you have to realize it for yourself for the most part. No one's going to be able to realize it for you. But that's where a book like this is so important,
Yes.
for people that are younger, to open their eyes to situations like that. And just to be able to see bigger than, I feel like when you're young, you're so, like, one track minded.
Did you, speaking of like when your brain finishes developing, do you have like, did you think you experienced it like where you could like tell like, oh my gosh?
I seriously do.
So do I. And I feel like it was the spring before I turned 28. All of a sudden I was like, I feel like an adult. Like I hadn't felt like an adult like all through my 20s. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm grown, and I feel rational, and like I know what I want out of life. It's
Yeah.
like something clicked.
I 28. That's when I feel like
That's crazy. So
switch.
I was like, yeah, just a different person.
Yeah, I don't even know how to explain it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Maybe there's probably a well-written explanation on how that change
Frontal
feels.
lobe.
It happens, people.
It's scary to me to think like how late in life it happens too, because like you said, there's like so many opportunities to screw your life up in your 20s. And I feel like it's just pure luck that I didn't.
And I feel like 30 is just, why do people think 30 is old? Let's just,
I know.
it's not old at all. I feel like because our frontal lobes develop at 28, I feel like that's really when you, like, wake up and start realizing life is just starting. First of all, that up until 30 is just like the lead up to life.
Yeah, I feel like it just felt like teenager 2.0,
Yeah.
like my early and mid 20s. Like now I finally feel like capable of anything, where I never felt capable before. I felt like life was happening to me. And now I feel like I'm in charge of my life, which is like a cool feeling.
I don't feel that way actually at all right now.
Well, it ebbs and it flows.
Because I feel like things are spiraling out of control on a macro level.
Yeah.
On a micro level, I agree. You think people that are, let's say, like 50 or 60 would be laughing at our conversation?
Probably, because like there's so much growth that happens even beyond that. I probably have told you about this. This was like maybe this time last year. I was talking to my grandma about like the best stage of her life, and she's like, "Oh, I miss being young. Like those were the years." And I was like, "Which decade are you referring to?" And she said 40 to 50, and that was like her being young, the best years of her life.
Oh, I love that.
I know, and it's like, so like it's very like empowering to think about like the best is very likely still yet to come.
Hopefully.
And when I was in my early 20s, I was like depressed as hell in my early 20s, but I still thought life was only to go downhill as I got older. And that's like the complete opposite has been true. And like the trajectory I'm on, like I feel like I'll just become like happier, more confident, more self-assured, which I would have never imagined that to be the case. Like, what year did they think the world was going to end?
2012.
2012,
right?
yeah. And I remember thinking like, whatever, like at least like I'm in the prime of my life. Like I got to experience this. I don't have to ever get old. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, that was like not the prime. That sucked.
Yeah, I think it was 2012. I remember watching that crazy movie.
Yeah.
That was a huge thing.
I didn't believe it was going to happen, but so many people did. And I was like, why are we freaking out about this?
Yeah.
Like,
It happened.
yeah,
Who cares?
whatever. Like, we've already lived the best years.
That's how I feel about the asteroid that's coming.
Well, now they said it's not.
Oh, it's not?
Yeah, I just saw that on
shoot.
TikTok yesterday. They said, "Okay, false alarm." Oh, well, I mean, I saw one TikTok saying that, so I don't know if that was verifiable, but I did
Wow.
just yesterday saying like, "Okay, never mind, we're in the clear."
Not you spreading misinformation.
Yeah, so
No, I'm just kidding.
hopefully not.
With everything going on, I was gonna be fine with it if an asteroid was gonna come. It just
Yeah.
felt right.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? This is probably what we deserve.
So at the end of the book, um, kind of leaves us with no like significant or I guess specific answers as far as to how things end for all the characters. Phoebe gets her job at the historical estate. Lila jets off to Canada. Gary just goes after life with Juice. And I don't know, Jim. But what do you think? Where do you think these people end up?
I liked how it was left open-ended, so hopefully for another book, but also so we could draw our own conclusions. I think I almost think Alison wants Phoebe and Gary to end up together, but I don't know if I think they do right away. I think if they do right away, it's going to be like a short burst and then they're going to fall apart. I think both of them have so much healing to do, and this week has like really started their healing in a weird way. I would love to see them have a friendship and like let things go from there, like not rush into being together. Phoebe and Gary had a lot of chemistry, but they need to let things simmer for a bit before they jump into anything. That's what I would like to see, but we will see. Or maybe we won't. I hope sure it's another book.
I hope so too. I think that, and I wonder if people in general are wanting a second book. I definitely would be excited to read a follow-up story to this. I also agree with you on Gary and Phoebe. While I do think that they have good chemistry and their personalities mesh, I just don't think right now is the time for them to jump into that. I mean, Gary needs to also just figure out what he wants. I don't think he's even thought about that until this week.
Yeah.
With kind of going through the motions and then with his breakup with Lila being a huge deal. He needs time. And Phoebe also, I mean, she just was ready to off herself. She needs to heal. But I do think that they could meet up in the future. And it could be good. Okay, so question.
Yeah.
Do you want to see more of Lila?
I think so. I think I would love if they do another book. Again, like have Phoebe's the main one, but Lila reappears. Like there's like still a friendship there. I think what they created over a week was like a very beautiful connection. Like it almost felt like one of those like once in a lifetime things where like they were meant to cross paths.
Mm-hmm.
They were like meant to better each other's lives and like help them come to these realizations together. I don't know if I think at this point Lila is an interesting enough like protagonist. She needs some years of just like growth, but I think it would be so fun if there was another book focused on Lila that it would be like her actual wedding, like to the person she was meant to be with. I think that could be really fun.
Do you think that Lila's interactions with Phoebe will change her as a person, like fundamentally?
I think so. I think there's like a lot of growth in a short amount of time, and I think it helped. Like Phoebe wasn't fawning over her, doting over her, and I think it was kind of like a little bit of a slap in the face, like a little bit of reality. Like Lila's not the main character, even in a situation like her own wedding. Like we're all just here existing, and I think that might have been the first time she ever or considered that.
I agree. I would be honestly interested to see how Alison would build out Lila's character after everything that happened. Because I would hope for a change in Lila, and I hope that she was humbled a little bit, but ultimately that allows her to find her true self. Because I do think that she's the type of person who was putting on a facade for whoever's in front of her, and that's never a fun way to live.
Yeah, she's being who she thought people wanted her to be rather than just like existing as she is. Yeah, it would be fun to see the real Lila. Do you think her and Jim end up together?
Honestly, I don't think so. I feel like, I mean, I think Jim saw parts of her maybe that Gary didn't even see, but I don't picture them together, I don't think.
I would rather see them quickly get together if I had to choose one of them. I'd rather Lila and Jim rather than Phoebe and Gary. I don't think they're endgame,
No.
but I do think I could see them like having a good like strong. I feel like the dynamic would be so awkward though with Jim and Gary being best friends.
I know.
That's like the only thing that throws a wrench into it. I personally would not be mature enough to handle that. Like pretend this is an alternate universe. You're single. I had an ex-fiance. Like we end on a good terms, but like you
It's
end
a
up,
no.
yeah.
It's a no.
I just don't. I don't think that's not even lacking maturity. That's just having common sense. Like that's
Yeah. It doesn't make for an easy like life.
yeah.
Yeah.
There are so many fish in the sea for both of them.
Yeah.
Like I think if they were just a missed connection, that could have been a great thing, but they
Too much drama. And I think Lila just needs to be by herself.
yeah, I want to see her like just like for years develop her own personality and like a strong sense of self, and then I do think it'd be fun to come back and see everything unfold the right way for her because we've seen things unfold wrong. But I would love to see her get like that happily ever after because I do think, she has been saying she's been planning her wedding since a little girl. Like she wants to be that bride, but I want to see her be ready to be a wife too and like get that storyline.
Mm-hmm. I agree. You really like a book when you're fantasizing about all the stories that
I know.
happen.
It's like if Alison doesn't write these, I'm just going to develop them in my head as I fall asleep at night.
Yeah, this book, just there's something about it that really like you found yourself so invested in everyone.
And it felt like it was like such a one of a kind book, I think. Like I hadn't read a book like that with like the whirlwind friendship. You read a lot of like romances that way, but just like this strong female friendship arc. And it's not like a lot of the female friendship arcs you read, they're like lifelong friends, things like that. This was just, it was unique and refreshing.
Absolutely. I agree.
I did not go on Reddit for this book at all because I was so afraid to read any criticism because I liked it so much.
So you didn't at all?
No.
I wonder, I don't really ever go on Reddit I usually go to YouTube, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
People's reviews, but all the reviews that I saw, people loved it.
Good. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. It was one of my top 5 books last year.
Yeah, I thought it was really excellent.
And it's kind of funny because I had seen it, I can't remember when it was published, but I'd seen it multiple times at the bookstore, and the book itself catches your eye.
Yeah, it's got a pretty cover.
Design. But I kept not picking it up, and then one day I just decided to download it on my Nook, and loved it so much. It was such a quick read too. I'm very happy to have come across it, and we need to look into her other books because honestly, now that we've been talking about this, I want to read another one.
Shall we do the fan cast?
Oh yes, fan cast.
It's always fun. And I feel like we say this every episode. We're mostly vibe checking, like not necessarily adhering strictly to the physical descriptions the author may or may not have given. So for Phoebe, I had Inni Rossum.
Love that. I had Daisy Edgar Jones.
You love that?
Yeah.
Lila, who did you have?
For Lila, I had Chloe Grace Moretz.
I love her.
Yeah,
she has like such like a sassy energy. I feel like that's really a good fit.
Yeah.
I had Elle Fanning, who I don't think naturally has that sassy energy, but I would love to see her embody it.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. I like her in general.
So do I. I feel like she's a very like one of a kind actress.
She is.
Like in her like demeanor, her looks, everything.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Gary?
I had James Marsden from Hairspray.
I like that one.
We love Hairspray.
We love Hairspray. For Gary, I had Jonathan Bailey.
Jonathan Bailey.
I just love him. So.
Will you refresh me on him?
Jonathan Bailey?
Yeah, she's more of like the pop culture gal. I know him when I see him, but
Jonathan Bailey's in Wicked.
Oh, okay. Right. Jim. I had Liam Hemsworth.
I didn't fan cast Jim. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. We're good. Then finally, Matt. I had Matthew Gray Gubler.
I love that. I love him.
I love him too.
For Matt, I had Joe Keery.
Joe Keery. I like that. They got such a similar vibe. Mm-hmm.
Is Wedding People one of the ones that's gotten picked up for a movie or no?
I hope so. I'm not sure.
I feel like we've read so many books that have gotten picked up for movies that
it's gotten so much hype. I feel like it's at least got to be on their radar to do that.
Yeah.
It hasn't already.
I would love that.
That would be. I feel like that's one of those, as long as they do it well, it'll be as good as the book.
Yeah. It has so much potential.
Yeah.
I feel like this book was actually meant for the big screen.
Yeah, I'm gonna cross my fingers that it ends up being picked up. I would love to watch that.
And I already said what I rated this book earlier, which was a 5.
Yeah,
Remember what you rated?
I gave it a 5 as
5.
well.
But yeah, I love this book. Recommend it to anyone who needs a book that's gonna hit the spot. I really feel like anyone would enjoy this book.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're watching or listening and have any recommendations for books that feel like this, I would love the recommendation. Like, I feel like this feels like a book that's like once in a lifetime almost. Like,
Yeah.
as dramatic as that sounds.
We just loved it
It's
that
just,
much.
yeah. And it was just like so unique.
It was.
All right, we will be back in 2 weeks discussing Intermezzo. If you haven't read that and you want to read it to keep up with us, we definitely recommend that one. It's definitely a different vibe than this, but still an excellent book.
Excellent. Very excellent.
Yeah, so thanks for sitting with us during our little book club, and we will be back in 2 weeks.
Thanks.
Bye.